Hello everyone. So I've just put up assignment number 1, which is the first research paper you'll need to do for this course. So there will be an announcement for it. And here I'm just going to give you some additional details. The assignment really covers everything, but I wanted to make sure there are a couple things that were completely clear before you got started. So first, the assignment is up. It's posted on Blackboard. So to find it, just go to the assignment section, and you'll see it under the online discussion board assignment. So it's the second assignment that I put on there. And in that section, you'll see a description of the paper. So what the paper is about, how long it needs to be, what you need to talk about, what the guidelines are for research. So it covers all that. And what the paper is you're going to pick an individual drug. And you're going to talk about it from a variety of perspectives. You're a historical perspective, you'll talk about where the drug comes from, what it does to the brain, what the usage trends are like. So do people use it now? What are the demographics like on drug use for that particular drug? And the list of drugs you can choose from are in the document as well. They're in the announcement for the assignment. I haven't put them all in there. So for example, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana are not in the list because your book covers those in a fair amount of detail. So what I want to do with this assignment is give you a chance to learn about a drug that isn't covered as heavily in your book or covered at all. If you have a particular drug that you want to do for your paper, you want to research for your paper, let me know if it's not on the list. If it's not covered heavily in the textbook, I will probably let you use that as your topic, but just check with me first. Also, there's a rubric associated with the assignment, and that tells you what I'm looking for, what my standards are, what different criteria I'm using for the paper. So for example, grammar and spelling count. If I can't understand the paper, then that's not going to be good. Also, making sure you cover all the relevant topics that I ask you to cover. That's very important. Obviously, staying on topic in terms of the drug that you're writing about is important. And it lists all that and what the criteria are for each set of standards. So as I mentioned, there's a set list of topics that are available in terms of which drugs you can write about. Again, if you want to write about one that's not on the list, check with me first, and if it's not covered too heavily in the text, I will probably let you go for that one. Overall, this paper is worth 20% of your final grade, so a significant portion. The other paper you'll write later in the semester is worth another 20%. Each of the exams is worth 25%. And then, of course, discussion is worth 10%. And we've already talked about that, and everyone's participating very well in discussion. So this is 20% of your grade. I did want to say a word about research and citing research. So this is first and foremost a research paper. And in this paper, you'll need to cite at least 4 sources. 4 sources will get you a ranking of proficient. So it's not going to get you that A+, but it is adequate for this paper. So one of the sources can be your textbook. It doesn't have to be, but you can use that. But that can only be one of your sources. You need to cite 4 different sources. When you cite a source, if it's in your reference list at the end of the paper, be sure to actually use that source. So don't pad your reference list with a bunch of sources so it looks like you did a lot of research. If the information covered in those sources is not in the paper, then you're not really using the source, and so it doesn't belong in the reference list. Also, at least 2 of the sources you use need to be scientific research articles. And especially for topics like what the drug does to the brain, research articles are very good for that sort of thing. So they give you information that you can't get anywhere else. And that isn't intuitive. It's not what everyone's opinion is about the drug. It's what the drug actually does to the brain, for example. You can use whatever research you want as long as it's from a legitimate scientific source. If you have some question as to whether something qualifies as a scientific article, just email it to me and ask, and I will tell you. And then a word about how we cite works and research in particular in papers. So there are 2 basic kinds of citation. One is a direct quotation, and that is where you are literally using the author's words. They're not your words. They're taken directly from the paper that you're citing. So you put it in quotes and you put the citation at the end of it. That is which paper that's from, and that should match one of the papers in your reference list. And so that's when you're not using your own words. You're using the words that someone else has written and put in the source that you're citing. So that needs to be in quotes. There are also paraphrases. So for example, if I just summarize the words that are in an article, if I'm not using those exact words, then I can write my own words. They don't need to be in quotes. In fact, they shouldn't be. But I still need to cite where that idea came from. So a direct quotation is if the words themselves didn't come from me. I need to say where the words came from. A paraphrase is if the words came from me, but the idea didn't. And so if the idea is in there from another paper, you need to still cite the paper, but it's just not in quotes. And be very careful about what you do with regard to quotations and paraphrases. If you put in a literal quote from another paper and then don't cite it, that's plagiarism. And plagiarism is something I'm not lenient about. All you need to do is say where the words came from. Obviously, the bulk of the paper needs to be your own words. But as long as you correctly attribute quotes, there's no problem. We do have a problem if you use someone else's words, or if you cite an idea that clearly wasn't generated by you, and you don't cite it. So be very careful about that. If you plagiarize, depending on the severity, the penalty can be anything from getting marked down in the paper up to failing the course if the violation is bad enough. So don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the time you save taking words from another source, because I do use safe assign, that'll catch it, or I can read a paper and tell when a paragraph isn't written in the same tone and in the same voice as the rest of the paper. So it's not worth the time you save. Just write things in your own words and cite things that aren't your own words. And when you do cite something, use APA format. So that is a particular kind of format. You can look it up online. There are examples. It's easy to find. And in terms of your reference list, use APA format for that as well. And I'll be honest, the easiest thing to do, especially for scientific journal articles, is if you go to Google Scholar and then put in the article title or the authors, and then search for it, there's a little section just under the article that says cite, and it'll give you different formats, and you can just find the APA format, and that'll automatically create the text you need to correctly cite that source. So that's a bit of a shortcut. Okay, as always, if you have any questions about the assignment, be sure to post them under the discussion board, or just email me directly, either way. And that is all. Good luck on the assignment, and I will talk to you all again this coming week.